Across the galaxy, when civilizations speak of warriors, they whisper names of legendary species. The crystalline Vorthak with their diamond-hard exoskeletons. The massive Krellian battle beasts with strength that can crush starship hulls. The telepathic Zephyrians who can predict their enemies' moves before they make them. But there's one name that makes even these legendary warriors fall silent. One species that every military academy teaches about in hushed, reverent tones. Not because they're the strongest, or the fastest, or the most technologically advanced. It's because when the impossible needs to be done, when every rational tactical analysis says there's no hope, when the very best of every other species has tried and failed, that's when someone makes the call that chills every civilized being to their core: send for the humans. Not just any humans. The ones they call the impossibles. The ones who look at certain death and smile. The ones who've never, not once in their blood-soaked history, failed to bring their people home. Today, that call has been made. And the galaxy is about to remember why humanity doesn't just fight wars. They end them. Admiral Kethvar of the Galactic Defense Council stared at the holographic display with all four of his eyes, his scaled hands trembling as he processed what he was seeing. The rescue mission to Kepler 442b had been a disaster of unprecedented proportions. 3 of the galaxy's most elite military units had been deployed to extract the research team trapped on the planet's surface, and all 3 had been wiped out completely. The Vorthak Crystal Guard, legendary for their unbreakable formations and diamond-hard exoskeletons, had lasted exactly 14 minutes against whatever was down there. The Krellian Devastator Battalion, whose battle beasts could punch through starship armor with their bear claws, had managed 22 minutes before their life signs went dark. Most shocking of all, the Zephyrian Mindwalker Division, who could read enemy intentions before they were even formed, had been eliminated in just 8 minutes. 27 researchers remained trapped in the underground facility on Kepler 442b, and whatever had killed 300 of the galaxy's finest warriors was still hunting them. The planet itself was a nightmare of hostile terrain, toxic atmosphere, and predators that defied classification. The research team had less than 48 hours of life support remaining. "Sir," came the voice of his aide, Lieutenant Commander Yixtal, "the Terran Federation is responding to our emergency broadcast." Kethvar's primary eyes swiveled to look at her while his secondary eyes remained fixed on the tactical display. "Which unit are they sending? Their Star Marines? The Solar Guard?" "Sir." Yixtal's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "They're sending the Death's Head Battalion." The bridge fell completely silent. Every officer present had heard the stories, the whispered legends that spread through cantinas and military academies across the galaxy. The Death's Head Battalion wasn't just an elite human unit. They were something else entirely. Something that other species struggled to comprehend. Kethvar had served in the Galactic Defense Council for 43 standard years. He had seen wars that consumed entire star systems, battles that raged for decades, and warriors whose names were carved into the very fabric of galactic history. But he had never seen the Death's Head Battalion in action. Nobody had, and survived to tell about it. The humans called them other names too. The Impossibles. The Last Resort. The Devil's Own. But their official designation was simple enough: Special Operations Unit 1347, Death's Head Battalion. 96 human soldiers who had never failed a mission. Not once. Not ever. "How long until they arrive?" Kethvar asked, his voice barely steady. "Their ship just entered the system, sir. The HTCV Nulnir. They'll be in orbit in 6 hours. 6 hours. The fastest any military force had ever covered the distance from the nearest jump point to Kepler 442b was 18 hours, and that was with experimental drive systems that pushed the very limits of physics. Somehow, the humans had cut that time by 2/3. "Sir," another officer called out from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the Mjolnir." "Put it through." The holographic display shifted to show the bridge of a human warship. The first thing that struck Kethvar was how small the humans looked compared to most galactic species, barely reaching his shoulder height. The second thing that struck him was their eyes. Every single human on that bridge had the same look in their eyes. It wasn't anger, or determination, or even confidence. It was hunger. The human who stepped forward wore the black uniform of the Terran Federation military, with insignia that Kethvar didn't recognize. His hair was gray at the temples, and his face bore scars that spoke of battles fought in places where medical technology couldn't immediately reach. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost conversational.
Admiral Cathvar, this is Colonel Marcus Kane, commanding officer of the Death's Head Battalion.
We've reviewed your tactical data.
We'll have your people out in 18 hours. 18 hours.
The timeline was impossible. It had taken the Crystal Guard 4 hours just to locate the research facility, and they had been eliminated before they could even attempt an extraction. Colonel Kane, Cathvar began carefully, with all due respect to your unit's reputation, 3 elite battalions have already failed this mission. The hostiles on Kepler 442b are unlike anything we've encountered.
They killed 300 warriors in less than an hour combined. Kane's expression didn't change.
If anything, he looked slightly amused.
Admiral, those weren't warriors.
Those were soldiers.
There's a difference. I don't understand. Soldiers fight wars, Admiral. Warriors end them. My people don't go to battle. They go to work. Behind Kane, another human stepped into view.
This one was younger, but carried himself with the same predatory confidence. His uniform bore the insignia of a major, and, when he smiled, Cathvar noticed that several of his teeth had been replaced with what looked like sharpened metal. "Sir," the major said to Kane, "the boys are getting restless. Sergeant Martinez is already checking his demolition charges, and Lieutenant Chen has started sharpening her knives.
They're excited. Excited."
The word hung in the air like a physical thing. These humans were excited about deploying to a planet that had just killed 300 elite warriors from across the galaxy. "Colonel Kane," Cathvar said slowly, "the hostiles on Kepler 442b are estimated to be at least Class 7 threats. They move faster than our sensors can track, they show signs of collective intelligence, and they appear to be completely immune to energy weapons."
Kane nodded thoughtfully. Interesting. What about kinetic weapons?
The Crystal Guard and Devastator Battalion both carried kinetic weapons as backup. They were overrun before they could determine effectiveness.
And the Zephyrians?
They reported that the hostiles' minds were wrong, somehow.
Alien beyond comprehension. The telepaths couldn't read them at all.
For the first time, Kane's expression changed. His smile became predatory, almost feral.
"Admiral, you just described our kind of target." The connection terminated before Cathvar could respond, leaving the bridge in stunned silence.
Around him, his officers exchanged glances that spoke volumes. They had just witnessed something that violated everything they thought they knew about military protocol, tactical assessment, and basic self-preservation. "Sir," Yixtal said quietly, "should we prepare burial honors for the human unit?"
Cathvar was quiet for a long moment, staring at the empty holographic display. Finally, he shook his head. "No, Commander.
Prepare celebration protocols. If the stories are true, if even half of what they say about the Death's Head Battalion is real, then those researchers are already saved.
They just don't know it yet."
In the depths of space, the HTCV Mjolnir continued its approach to Kepler 442b. The ship itself was unremarkable by galactic standards, a mid-sized assault vessel with stealth capabilities and heavy armor.
What made it remarkable was its crew.
96 humans who had turned warfare into an art form. 96 individuals who had looked into the abyss of every battlefield imaginable and, not only survived, but thrived. They were scientists of violence, artists of destruction, and philosophers of victory. And they were about to remind the galaxy why humanity had earned its place among the stars not through diplomacy or technology, but through an absolute, uncompromising refusal to let their people die alone. Colonel Marcus Kane stood in the mission briefing room aboard the Mjolnir, looking at the holographic representation of Kepler 442b as his team leaders filed in. Each of them moved with the fluid grace of apex predators, their movements economic and precise. These weren't just soldiers. They were weapons in human form. Major Sarah Chen took her seat at the front, her scarred hands resting casually on the table. She commanded Alpha Squad, 12 humans who specialized in close-quarters combat and had never lost a teammate. Her dark eyes studied the planetary data with the intensity of a scholar and the hunger of a wolf. Captain Jake Martinez dropped into his chair with characteristic irreverence, already pulling out a small device that looked suspiciously like an improvised explosive. As Beta Squad's demolitions expert and commanding officer, he had a reputation for solving problems through the creative application of high explosives. His squad of 11 had once collapsed an entire mountain range to stop an alien invasion.
Lieutenant Colonel David Park took his position with military precision.
Gamma Squad's leader was a former sniper who had once held off an entire army for 6 days with nothing but a rifle and an absolute refusal to retreat. His 14-person squad specialized in long-range warfare and had never missed a target.
The last to enter was Master Sergeant Elena Volkov, leader of Delta Squad.
9 humans who were officially designated as combat engineers but were more accurately described as miracle workers. They were the ones who found ways to accomplish impossible tasks with inadequate equipment and unlimited determination. "Gentlemen, lady," Kane began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, "we have a rescue mission.
27 researchers trapped on a hostile world. 3 military units have failed to extract them.
The hostiles are fast, intelligent, and have so far proven immune to energy weapons."
Shen leaned forward slightly. "What's the terrain like?"
"Toxic atmosphere, Class 9 environmental hazards, underground facility approximately 2 kilometers below surface level.
Single access point, heavily defended."
Martinez grinned, his metal teeth glinting.
"Sounds like Tuesday."
"The timeline is critical," Kane continued.
"Research team has 40 hours of life support remaining.
We deploy in 4 hours.
Park raised a hand.
"Sir, the tactical data shows the hostiles eliminated 300 enemy combatants in under an hour."
"Do we have any intel on their capabilities?"
"Limited. They move faster than conventional sensors, they appear to have some form of hive intelligence, and they're completely immune to energy weapons."
"The Zephyrian telepaths couldn't read them at all." Volkov spoke for the first time, her Russian accent thick despite decades of speaking Galactic Standard.
"Colonel, what is Psi's estimate for hostile force?"
Kane's expression became grim. "Conservative estimate is 10,000. Optimistic estimate is 5,000. The room fell silent for a moment. Mathematics was simple enough. 96 humans against at least 5,000 hostiles that had already proven capable of eliminating elite galactic military units. Then, Martinez started laughing.
It began as a chuckle, then built into full-blown laughter that was somehow more terrifying than any war cry. One by one, the other squad leaders joined in, until the entire briefing room echoed with the sound of humans finding genuine amusement in impossible odds.
"Sir," Chen said when the laughter died down, "do we have authorization for unlimited engagement parameters?" Kane nodded grimly. "The Galactic Defense Council has given us carte blanche.
No restrictions, no limitations, no rules of engagement beyond completing the mission." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. When humans were given unlimited engagement parameters, the result was never pretty. It meant that the Death's Head Battalion was authorized to do what they did best, end threats permanently and completely. "Deployment will be in 4 squads, Kane continued. Alpha Squad will handle close-quarters combat and facility penetration. Beta Squad will provide explosive support and area denial.
Gamma Squad will establish overwatch and provide ranged elimination.
Delta Squad will handle extraction logistics and technical support." He paused, looking at each of his officers in turn.
"Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we do. This is who we are. We are the ones they call when everyone else has failed. We are the final answer to questions that shouldn't be asked."
The holographic display shifted to show individual personnel files, each one representing a human being who had voluntarily chosen to walk into hell for people they had never met. Engineers who could build bridges under fire. Medics who had performed surgery in zero gravity while being shot at. Snipers who could hit targets at ranges that violated the laws of physics. Demolitions experts who could bring down buildings with homemade explosives and pure creativity. They were humanity's finest, and they were about to remind the galaxy why their species had earned its fearsome reputation one impossible victory at a time. The Mjolnir continued its approach to Kepler 442b, carrying 96 humans toward what every tactical analysis suggested was certain death. But, for the first time since the crisis began, Admiral Kefbar found himself believing that those 27 researchers might actually have a chance. After all, they weren't alone anymore. They had humanity's monsters on their side. The surface of Kepler 442b was a hellscape that defied rational description. Massive crystalline formations jutted from the ground like broken teeth, each one pulsing with an eerie bioluminescent glow that hurt to look at directly. The atmosphere was a toxic soup of methane and sulfur compounds that would kill most galactic species in seconds, while the gravity was nearly twice Earth normal. It was exactly the kind of place that the Death's Head Battalion called home. The Mjolnir hung in orbit like a silent predator, its stealth systems engaged to avoid detection by whatever forces controlled the planet below.
In the ship's armory, 96 humans prepared for deployment with the methodical precision of craftsmen preparing their tools.
Master Sergeant Elena Volkov ran her hands over the modified atmospheric processor that her squad had cobbled together from spare parts and engineering principles that most species would consider impossible. Delta Squad had a reputation for making miracles happen with inadequate resources, and this mission would require every miracle they could manage. Nikolai, she called to her second-in-command, how long for atmospheric conversion in target zone?
Sergeant Nikolai Petrov looked up from his calculations, his cybernetic left eye glowing softly as it processed atmospheric data. 12 minutes for breathable air in 50-meter radius, Elena.
But, equipment will need constant maintenance under these conditions.
Volkov nodded grimly.
12 minutes was barely enough time to establish a safe zone for the extraction, but it would have to be sufficient.
Delta Squad had accomplished more with less. In another section of the armory, Captain Jake Martinez was conducting his final inspection of the explosives that Beta Squad would carry planetside. Each charge had been personally crafted by Martinez himself, designed to maximize destructive potential while minimizing weight and bulk. His 11-person squad could level a city block with what they were carrying, and that might not be enough for this mission. Boss, called Corporal Lisa Wong, Beta Squad's electronics specialist, I've finished programming the smart mines. They'll distinguish between humans and hostiles based on bioelectric signatures.
Martinez grinned, his metal teeth gleaming.
How many did you manage to fit in the drop pods? 237, sir.
Each one capable of taking out anything within a 15-meter radius.
Beautiful. Make sure the proximity sensors are set for maximum aggression. I want anything that isn't human to have a very bad day.
Lieutenant Colonel David Park stood motionless in Gamma Squad's preparation area, his enhanced rifle resting against his shoulder as he ran through targeting calculations in his head. The weapon was a work of art, custom built to his specifications and capable of accuracy that bordered on the supernatural. His squad of sharpshooters was making similar preparations, each one calibrating their weapons for the unique atmospheric conditions of Kepler 442b. Sir, said Staff Sergeant Mike Thompson, Park spotter and second-in-command, visibility is going to be severely limited down there.
The atmospheric composition will interfere with most targeting systems. Park's expression didn't change.
Then, we'll use iron sights and instinct.
Gamma Squad has never missed a target, Sergeant. We're not starting today. Thompson nodded, knowing better than to question Park's confidence.
The man had once made a confirmed kill at over 3 kilometers in a blizzard with winds exceeding 60 kilometers per hour.
Atmospheric interference would be an inconvenience, not an obstacle. Major Sarah Chen moved through Alpha Squad's preparation area like a predator inspecting her territory.
Her 12-person squad was responsible for close-quarters combat, and each member was a weapon in human form. They carried modified assault rifles, combat knives that could cut through starship armor, and enough hand-to-hand combat training to take on small armies.
Equipment check, Chen announced, her voice carrying absolute authority. Sound off.
Sergeant Rodriguez, medical and combat ready. Corporal Kim, demolitions and assault ready. Private First Class Jackson, heavy weapons and breach ready. One by one, Alpha Squad reported their readiness, each voice calm and professional despite the fact that they were about to deploy against impossible odds. These weren't just soldiers, they were artists of violence who had turned warfare into a precise science.
Colonel Marcus Kane entered the armory just as the final preparations were being completed.
The sight that greeted him would have terrified most galactic species, but it filled him with pride. 96 humans, each one a master of their craft, each one absolutely committed to bringing those researchers home alive. Listen up, Kane announced, his voice cutting through the organized chaos of final preparations. Latest intelligence indicates that the hostile force has grown since the previous failed rescue attempts.
Current estimates suggest we're looking at 15,000 contacts minimum.
The armory fell silent for a moment, then, Martinez whistled appreciatively.
15,000?
Sir, that's barely enough for warm-up exercises.
The comment triggered a ripple of dark laughter throughout the assembled humans. It wasn't bravado or false confidence.
These were people who had faced impossible odds so many times that they had forgotten what fear felt like. Deployment in 30 minutes, Kane continued. Alpha Squad will establish the beachhead and penetrate the facility. Beta Squad will provide explosive support and area denial. Gamma Squad will establish overwatch positions and provide ranged elimination. Delta Squad will handle technical support and extraction logistics. He paused, looking at each of his people in turn. The researchers have been trapped for 72 hours. They're scared, they're running low on supplies, and they think they're going to die down there.
Our job is to prove them wrong.
Dr. Sarah Mitchell pressed her back against the reinforced metal wall of the research facility's main laboratory, listening to the sounds of something large moving in the corridors above. For 3 days, she and her 26 colleagues had been trapped in this underground hell, surrounded by creatures that defied every scientific principle she had ever learned.
The hostiles were unlike anything in the galactic database.
They moved with impossible speed and coordination, their forms shifting and changing as if they weren't entirely solid. Energy weapons passed through them harmlessly, and they seemed to possess some form of collective intelligence that allowed them to coordinate attacks across vast distances. Dr. Mitchell, whispered Dr. James Chen, the expedition's xenobiologist, I'm reading movement on multiple levels.
They're still hunting for us. Mitchell nodded grimly.
The research team had managed to seal themselves in the facility's most secure section, but it was only a matter of time before the hostiles found a way in. Their life support would last another 36 hours at most, and the emergency beacon had been transmitting for 3 days without response.
The Galactic Defense Council sent 3 rescue missions, said Dr. Elena Vasquez, the team's geologist.
All 3 failed.
We're on our own.
No, Mitchell said firmly, though she wasn't entirely sure she believed it herself.
The beacon is still transmitting. Someone will come.
Above them, the sound of movement grew louder, more aggressive. Whatever was up there knew where they were hiding, and it was getting impatient.
The first sign that something had changed was the seismic vibration that shook the entire facility.
It started as a low rumble, then built to a thunderous roar that made the reinforced walls shake.
Emergency lighting flickered, and several pieces of equipment fell from their mounting brackets.
What was that? Dr. Chen asked, his voice tight with fear.
Dr.
Mitchell was about to answer when her communicator crackled to life with a transmission on an emergency frequency she didn't recognize. The voice that emerged was calm, professional, and speaking in accented galactic standard. Research team, this is Colonel Marcus Kane, Terran Federation Death's head battalion.
We are here to take you home.
Stay in your current position and maintain communication silence until we reach your location. The research team stared at each other in stunned silence. They had never heard of the Death's Head Battalion, but the confidence in that voice was absolute. More importantly, someone had actually reached the planet's surface alive.
Another seismic vibration shook the facility, followed by what sounded like explosions in the distance.
Then came something even more unusual, the sound of the hostiles screaming. The creatures that had terrorized them for 3 days, the ones that had eliminated 3 entire military units, were screaming in what could only be described as fear and pain.
My God, Dr.
Vasquez whispered, what kind of military unit did they send? On the surface of Kepler 442b, Beta Squad was demonstrating why they were considered the galaxy's most creative demolitions experts. Captain Martinez had deployed his people in a perfect defensive perimeter around the facility's main entrance, and every approach was now covered by overlapping fields of death. Corporal Wong, Martinez called into his communicator, activate the smart mine field.
Let's give our new friends a warm welcome.
237 mines activated simultaneously, their sensors scanning for any non-human bioelectric signatures. The effect was immediate and devastating. Hostiles that had been converging on the facility entrance suddenly found themselves in the middle of a perfectly coordinated minefield. The explosions lit up the toxic atmosphere like deadly fireworks, each one eliminating multiple targets. But what made Martinez smile was the reaction of the surviving hostiles. They weren't just retreating, they were running in what could only be described as terror. Sir, called Private Rodriguez over the squad communications channel, hostile forces are pulling back from all approach vectors.
They're actually afraid of us.
Martinez chuckled as he armed another batch of explosives. Good. Fear makes them predictable. 3 kilometers away, Lieutenant Colonel Park had established Gamma Squad's overwatch position on the highest crystalline formation within range of the facility. His enhanced rifle was already tracking targets, and his squad was demonstrating why they had never missed a shot. "Contact, 2,000 meters, moving fast," called Staff Sergeant Thompson through his spotting scope. Park's rifle was already moving, tracking the target through the toxic atmosphere. His cybernetic enhancements calculated wind speed, gravity differential, and atmospheric density in microseconds. When he pulled the trigger, the hostile creature was eliminated before it even knew it was being hunted. "Confirmed kill," Thompson reported. "Sir, they're trying to flank us from the north." "I see them," Park replied, already shifting his aim. "Sergeant Williams, take the group on the left. Corporal Nash, handle the right flank. Everyone else, follow my lead." Gamma Squad opened fire in perfect synchronization, their enhanced rifles cutting through the hostile forces like surgical instruments. Each shot was precise, calculated, and absolutely lethal. The creatures that had overwhelmed 3 military battalions found themselves being eliminated by humans they couldn't even see. In the facility's lower levels, Alpha Squad was demonstrating why they were considered the galaxy's finest close-quarters combat specialists. Major Chen led her 12-person team through corridors filled with hostiles, and every encounter ended the same way: absolute human victory. Contact Front, called Sergeant Rodriguez as another group of creatures materialized from what had appeared to be solid wall. Alpha Squad responded with fluid precision that looked more like a deadly dance than a military operation. Chen's modified assault rifle eliminated 3 targets in rapid succession, while her team moved through the hostiles like predators among prey. The creatures that had proven immune to energy weapons discovered that kinetic weapons fired by humans were an entirely different problem. Enhanced ammunition designed specifically for penetrating unknown defenses tore through their shifting forms, causing them to collapse into puddles of strange, viscous fluid. "Area secure," Chen reported as the last hostile fell. Proceeding to research team location. But what impressed her most wasn't their weapons' effectiveness. It was the way the hostiles reacted to her squad. These creatures had shown no fear when facing the Crystal Guard or the Devastator Battalion. They had eliminated the Zephyrian telepaths without hesitation. But when they saw humans, they hesitated. Just for a split second, but it was enough. They recognized something in Alpha Squad that triggered an instinctual response deeper than intelligence or tactics. They recognized apex predators. Deep in the facility's most secure section, Delta Squad was performing the kind of miracle that had made them legendary throughout human space. Master Sergeant Volkov's people were not just establishing extraction routes, they were rebuilding the facility's infrastructure in real time. "Atmospheric processor is online," reported Sergeant Petrov as his cybernetic eye monitored environmental readings. "Breathable air in 30 seconds. Power grid restored to all critical systems," called Specialist Garcia from his position at the facility's main computer terminal. "Research data is secure and ready for extraction." Volkov nodded grimly as she watched her squad work. They were engineers, but they were also warriors. Every piece of equipment they carried could be turned into a weapon if necessary, and every technical skill they possessed could be applied to combat situations. Above them, the sounds of battle were intensifying. Beta Squad's explosions were getting closer together, which meant the hostiles were pressing their attack despite heavy casualties. Gamma Squad's rifle fire was a constant background rhythm, each shot representing another eliminated threat. But Alpha Squad had gone silent, which meant they were deep in the facility and approaching the research team's location. "Elena," Kane's voice crackled through her communicator, "how long until extraction is possible?" 15 minutes for full environmental control, Colonel. Research team will be ready for movement in 10. Understood. Begin preparation for emergency extraction. Alpha Squad is encountering heavier resistance than anticipated. Volkov felt a chill that had nothing to do with the planet's hostile environment. If Alpha Squad was finding the resistance challenging, then the hostile force was even larger than their worst estimates. But that just meant they would have to work faster. In the depths of Kepler 442b, the Death's Head Battalion was doing what they did best, accomplishing the impossible through superior skill, absolute determination, and a complete refusal to accept failure. They were humanity's monsters, and they were about to remind the galaxy why their species had earned its reputation one impossible victory at a time. Major Sarah Chen moved through the facility's corridors like a force of nature, her enhanced combat armor allowing her to navigate the hostile environment with deadly precision. Alpha Squad had encountered resistance unlike anything in their extensive combat experience, but they were adapting in real time with the fluid creativity that made human warriors legendary.
Sergeant Rodriguez, Chen called softly into her communicator, "What's your assessment of hostile combat patterns?"
Rodriguez crouched behind an overturned laboratory table, his medical training allowing him to analyze the strange fluid that remained when the creatures were eliminated.
"Ma'am, these things aren't just alien. They're operating on principles that violate basic physics.
They can phase through solid matter at will, but kinetic weapons fired with sufficient velocity can still damage them."
"Meaning?"
"Meaning they exist partially in our dimension and partially somewhere else. Energy weapons interact with their alternate dimensional components, which is why they're immune."
"But high-velocity projectiles can damage their real-world manifestations." Chen nodded grimly.
Rodriguez wasn't just Alpha Squad's medic, he was a xenobiology specialist with advanced degrees in interdimensional physics. His analysis meant that humanity's preference for kinetic weapons was the only reason they were succeeding where other species had failed. "Contact ahead," called Corporal Kim from her point position. Multiple hostiles, moving in coordinated patterns. Chen moved forward to assess the situation, and what she saw made her pause. The hostiles weren't just defending the facility, they were learning. Each encounter with Alpha Squad was teaching them new tactics, and they were sharing that knowledge instantaneously across their collective intelligence network. "They're adapting to our methods," Chen observed.
"Time to adapt faster."
She activated her squad's tactical network, allowing all 12 members to share sensory data and coordinate their movements with superhuman precision. It was a technology that most galactic species considered impossible, but humans had developed it through necessity and refined it through countless battles.
"New tactical protocol," Chen announced. "Fluid engagement, maximum unpredictability."
"Don't give them time to analyze our patterns." Alpha Squad flowed into motion like a school of predatory fish, each member moving independently but in perfect coordination with their teammates. They engaged the hostiles from multiple angles simultaneously, using tactics that changed every few seconds to prevent adaptation. The result was beautiful and terrible to witness. Humans who had spent their entire careers perfecting the art of warfare demonstrating why their species had never met a military challenge they couldn't overcome through superior creativity and absolute determination. But what impressed Chen most was the hostiles' reaction. For the first time since the engagement began, she saw something in their movements that looked like genuine fear. They recognized that they were facing something beyond their understanding, something that operated on principles they couldn't adapt to quickly enough. 3 levels above, Captain Martinez was having the time of his life. Beta Squad had turned the facility's upper levels into a labyrinth of death, with explosives placed in patterns that would have seemed random to most military strategists but made perfect sense to anyone who understood human psychology. Corporal Wong, Martinez called cheerfully, "Activate Sequence 7.
Let's give them a demonstration of human creativity."
Wong grinned as she triggered a chain reaction that turned half the facility's upper level into a masterpiece of controlled destruction. Explosions bloomed in sequence, each one driving hostile forces toward predetermined kill zones where more explosives waited. "Sir," called Private Rodriguez over the communications channel, "hostile forces are attempting to bypass our perimeter by coming through the facility's ventilation system." "Excellent," Martinez replied, pulling out a device that looked like it had been built in someone's garage.
"I was hoping they'd try that."
The device was one of Martinez's personal creations, a gas dispersal system that could flood the ventilation network with a compound that was perfectly safe for humans but absolutely lethal to anything with a different biochemical structure. It violated several galactic conventions on chemical warfare, but the Death's Head Battalion operated under different rules. 20 seconds later, the ventilation system became a delivery method for death itself. Hostile creatures throughout the facility's upper levels collapsed as the compound reached them, their otherworldly forms dissolving into the same strange fluid that marked all of their deaths. "Problem solved," Martinez announced with satisfaction. "Corporal Wong, begin preparation for Phase 2 demolitions.
When we extract that research team, I want this entire facility to come down behind us."
For kilometers away, Lieutenant Colonel Park was providing Overwatch support with the kind of precision that had made Gamma Squad legendary throughout human space. His enhanced rifle had been firing continuously for 27 minutes, and he hadn't missed a single shot. "Sir," called Staff Sergeant Thompson through his spotting scope, "hostile forces are attempting to coordinate a mass assault on Beta Squad's position.
Looks like several thousand contacts converging from multiple directions." Park's cybernetic enhancements calculated firing solutions faster than most computers could process data. Distance to primary concentration? 1,800 meters, sir. Moving fast.
Park's rifle spoke once, and the lead hostile creature ceased to exist. His shot had been perfectly calculated to cause maximum disruption to the advancing formation, and the effect was immediate. The coordinated assault dissolved into chaos as the creatures struggled to reorganize.
Gamma Squad, Park announced calmly, mass engagement protocol. Maximum rate of fire, overlapping coverage. Show them what human marksmanship looks like.
14 enhanced rifles opened fire simultaneously, each one operated by a human who had spent decades perfecting their craft. The result was a demonstration of precision shooting that would have been impossible for most galactic species to believe, let alone accomplish. Each shot was calculated for maximum effect, targeting creatures that were providing coordination for the larger group. Within 90 seconds, the assault had collapsed entirely, with surviving hostiles retreating in what could only be described as panic. "Sir," called Sergeant Williams from his position on the formation's left flank, "they're not just retreating.
They're running. These things are actually afraid of us." Park nodded grimly. The hostiles had never encountered anything like human warfare.
Most galactic species fought with overwhelming force or superior technology, but humans fought with creativity, adaptability, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat.
It was a combination that even interdimensional predators couldn't counter effectively.
In the facility's deepest levels, Master Sergeant Volkov was performing the kind of technical miracle that had made Delta Squad essential to every human military operation. Her 9-person squad was not just maintaining life support systems, they were rebuilding the facility's entire infrastructure in real time while under fire.
"Nikolai," Volkov called to her second-in-command, "how long until the extraction route is secure?" Sergeant Petrov's cybernetic eye glowed as he processed structural data. 8 minutes for primary route, Elena.
"But I'm detecting massive structural damage throughout the facility. Whatever these creatures are, they've been feeding on the building's support systems."
Volkov paused in her work, studying the readings on her portable engineering terminal.
The data showed damage patterns that defied conventional understanding. The hostiles weren't just occupying the facility, they were consuming it at a molecular level. "New priority," she announced to her squad.
"Accelerated extraction protocol. This facility is going to collapse whether we blow it up or not."
Specialist Garcia looked up from his position at the facility's main computer system.
"Sergeant, I've got good news and bad news. Good news is that I've secured all the research data.
Bad news is that the facility's power grid is failing faster than we can repair it."
"How long do we have?" "Maybe 20 minutes before total structural collapse." Volkov felt the familiar chill that came with impossible deadlines and inadequate resources.
But Delta Squad had built their reputation on accomplishing miracles under exactly these conditions. The explosions had been constant for over an hour, punctuated by the distinctive crack of high-powered rifles and the occasional inhuman scream from the creatures that had held them prisoner. "Dr. Mitchell," whispered Dr. Chen, "the sounds are getting closer."
"Whatever's happening up there, it's moving toward us."
Mitchell nodded, clutching her emergency communicator. The last transmission from Colonel Kane had been brief but clear: "Stay in position and wait for extraction." But the waiting was almost harder than the 3 days of hiding from the creatures.
"Dr. Vasquez," she called softly to the team's geologist, "are you still reading seismic activity? Constant vibrations, but they're not natural. Someone is using controlled explosives with incredible precision. Whoever's up there knows exactly how much force they can use without bringing down the entire facility."
Before Mitchell could respond, her communicator crackled with a new transmission.
The voice was calm, professional, and speaking in an accent she couldn't identify. "Research team, this is Master Sergeant Volkov, Delta Squad.
We are 3 levels above your position and descending.
Maintain your current location. Extraction begins in 6 minutes." 6 minutes? Dr. Chen asked incredulously.
"It took us 3 hours to get down here when we first arrived." The answer came in the form of seismic vibrations that shook the entire facility. But these weren't explosions, they were the sound of heavy machinery moving at impossible speeds. Someone was literally rebuilding the facility's elevator systems in real time. 5 minutes later, the reinforced door to their sanctuary hissed open, revealing a figure in black combat armor that looked more like advanced engineering equipment than military gear. Master Sergeant Volkov entered the room with the confidence of someone who had never encountered a technical problem she couldn't solve. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said in her thick Russian accent, "I am Master Sergeant Volkov.
My people and I are here to take you home.
Please gather your essential research data and prepare for immediate evacuation." Behind her, 2 more figures in similar armor entered the room. One immediately began setting up what looked like an atmospheric processor, while the other started installing emergency lighting that was brighter and more stable than the facility's original systems.
"How did you get here so fast?" Dr. Mitchell asked, still struggling to believe that rescue had actually arrived.
Volkov's expression didn't change, but there was something that might have been amusement in her eyes.
"Doctor, when humans decide to go somewhere, we get there.
When we decide to rescue someone, they get rescued.
When we decide that something needs to be built, it gets built."
She gestured to her equipment, which had already transformed the research team's hiding place into something that looked more like a military command center.
"My squad is Delta Squad, Death's Head Battalion.
We specialize in accomplishing impossible tasks with inadequate resources."
"The Death's Head Battalion?" Dr. Chen asked. "I've never heard of them."
"Good," Volkov replied simply.
"That means we're doing our job correctly."
3 levels above, Major Chen's voice crackled through the communications network.
"Delta Squad, this is Alpha. We're encountering massive resistance between your position and the extraction point. Hostile forces are concentrating everything they have to stop us."
Volkov keyed her communicator.
"Alpha Squad, this is Delta." "Understood. How long do you need?" "Give us 8 minutes to clear the route." "You have 5. "Understood. Alpha Squad out." Volkov turned back to the research team, her expression businesslike. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are leaving in 5 minutes. My colleagues are currently clearing our exit route.
I suggest you gather anything you cannot leave behind, because we will not be returning." Dr. Mitchell looked around the laboratory that had been their home and prison for the past 3 days. 3 days that had felt like an eternity, surrounded by creatures that defied understanding and facing what seemed like certain death. "Sergeant Volkov," she said quietly, "how many of you are there?"
96, Doctor." 96?
Against how many of those creatures?
Volkov's expression became something that might have been a smile. "Doctor, it does not matter how many there are. We are humans.
We do not leave our people behind, and we do not accept defeat. Your people called for help, and we answered." She gestured toward the ceiling, where the sounds of battle were intensifying. "Right now, my colleagues are demonstrating to those creatures why humanity earned its place among the stars. Not through diplomacy, not through superior technology, but through an absolute refusal to let our people die alone." The research team gathered their essential equipment in stunned silence, still struggling to comprehend that rescue had come in the form of 96 humans who had somehow accomplished what 3 entire military battalions had failed to achieve. Above them, the Death's Head Battalion continued their work, turning the nightmare of Kepler 442b into just another day at the office. They were humanity's monsters, and they were about to remind the galaxy that some species are too stubborn to die and too dangerous to ignore. The extraction was about to begin, and, with it, a demonstration of human warfare that would become legend throughout galactic space. The extraction corridor that Delta Squad had carved through Kepler 442b's nightmare facility was a masterpiece of human engineering under impossible conditions. Master Sergeant Volkov led the research team through passages that had been reinforced, rerouted, and equipped with life support systems that shouldn't have been possible to install in such a short time. "Stay close and move quickly," Volkov instructed as they navigated through sections of the facility that looked like they had been rebuilt by angels of war. "My squad has created safe zones every 50 meters, but the hostiles are adapting faster than we anticipated."
"Doctor," Volkov said calmly, "humans do not accept limitations.
When we encounter obstacles, we find ways around them.
When we face impossible problems, we create new solutions. When someone tells us something cannot be done, we do it anyway."
They reached the first safe zone, a section of corridor that had been transformed into something resembling a high-tech bunker. Emergency atmospheric processors hummed quietly, providing clean air and stable environmental conditions. Defensive positions had been established at both ends, and emergency medical equipment was ready for immediate use.
Delta Squad's work, Volkov explained to the amazed researchers.
We specialize in creating miracles from spare parts and determination. Her communicator crackled with a transmission from Colonel Kane.
Delta Squad, this is Kane. Sit rep. Research team secure and moving toward extraction point, Volkov reported. ETA to surface is 12 minutes. Understood.
Be advised, hostile forces are massing for a final assault. They know we're extracting the civilians.
How many contacts? Conservative estimate is 20,000. They're pulling forces from across the entire continent.
The number hung in the air like a physical weight. His cybernetic medical scanners were analyzing the samples in real time, searching for weaknesses they could exploit. Ma'am, they're definitely interdimensional entities, but they're anchored to this reality through some kind of quantum resonance field. That's why kinetic weapons work but energy weapons don't.
We're disrupting their quantum coherence. Can we use that information tactically? Maybe.
If we could generate a broad-spectrum quantum disruption field, we could force them all into full manifestation in our reality. Make them completely solid and vulnerable.
All squads, this is Alpha, she transmitted over the tactical network.
Hostiles are demonstrating enhanced coordination. They may have a command structure we haven't identified.
Alpha Squad, this is Gamma, Kane Lieutenant Colonel Park's calm voice. This isn't just an assault, it's an invasion.
The creatures were moving in formations that mimicked human military doctrine, using cover and concealment techniques that suggested they had been studying every human engagement. Gamma Squad, Park announced, priority shift to disruption tactics.
Don't give them time to implement their adaptations. His squad responded with the fluid creativity that made humans legendary.
Instead of maintaining predictable firing patterns, they shifted to chaos warfare, using tactics that changed every few seconds to prevent enemy adaptation.
The result was a demonstration of human adaptability that the hostiles couldn't counter.
Every time they adjusted to one tactical approach, humans shifted to something entirely different, staying ahead of their adaptation curve through superior creativity and battlefield experience. On the facility's surface, Captain Martinez was having the kind of day that made him remember why he loved his job. Beta Squad had turned the entire surface complex into an explosive maze, with charges placed in patterns that would have seemed random to most strategists but made perfect sense to anyone who understood controlled destruction. Sir, called Corporal Wong from her position at the detonation control station, the hostiles are trying to bypass our perimeter by coming up through the geological formations. Martinez grinned, his metal teeth glinting in the toxic atmosphere.
Excellent.
I was hoping they'd try something creative. He pulled out a device that looked like it had been assembled from kitchen appliances and military-grade explosives.
Wong, remember those seismic charges we placed in the crystal formations when we first deployed? The ones you said were for just in case? Those are the ones. Time to turn this entire complex into a demonstration of human geological engineering.
The seismic charges detonated in perfect sequence, turning the crystalline formations that covered Kepler 442b's surface into a network of deadly traps. Hostiles that had been using the formations for cover suddenly found themselves buried under tons of carefully directed geological collapse. Sir, Wong called excitedly, that was beautiful. The entire formation collapsed in exactly the pattern you calculated. Wong, when you've spent as many years as I have turning landscapes into weapons, you develop an eye for this sort of thing. But, even as they celebrated their success, Martinez could see that the hostiles were adapting. The surviving creatures weren't just retreating, they were analyzing the destruction patterns and sharing that information across their collective intelligence network.
All right, Martinez said thoughtfully, they want to learn how humans think? Let's teach them a lesson they'll never forget.
He began activating charges in a pattern that seemed completely random but was actually based on human psychological warfare principles. Each explosion was designed not just to eliminate hostiles but to create maximum psychological impact on the survivors. Deep in the facility's extraction route, Master Sergeant Volkov was guiding the research team through sections that had been transformed into something resembling a high-tech evacuation corridor. Her squad had installed atmospheric processors, emergency lighting, and defensive positions that turned their escape route into the safest place on the entire planet. Sergeant Volkov, Dr. Mitchell called breathlessly as they climbed through a section that had been reinforced with materials that shouldn't have existed. How did you build all of this so quickly? Dr. Volkov replied without slowing down, humans have been solving impossible engineering problems for thousands of years. We built cities in deserts, bridges across vast rivers, and tunnels through mountains. Creating a safe passage through a hostile facility is just another day at the office. Her communicator crackled with updates from the other squads.
Alpha Squad was engaging massive hostile forces 3 levels above. Gamma Squad was providing overwatch support against formations that were adapting to human tactics.
Beta Squad was turning the surface complex into a masterpiece of controlled destruction. Sergeant called Dr. Chun from behind her, the sounds of battle are intensifying.
Are your people going to be able to extract with us?
Volkov's expression didn't change, but there was something in her voice that spoke of absolute confidence.
Doctor, the Death's Head Battalion has never failed a mission. We do not leave people behind, and we do not accept defeat.
My colleagues will complete their assignments and extract when their work is finished. They reached the final safe zone before the surface, and Volkov could see daylight filtering through the emergency exit her squad had carved through solid rock. But she could also see massive movement in the toxic atmosphere beyond, shadows that suggested hostile forces massing for a final assault. All teams, this is Delta, she transmitted.
Research team is at final safe zone. Requesting sitrep on extraction security.
Delta, this is Alpha, came Major Chen's voice, strained but controlled.
Massive resistance between your position and the extraction point.
We're holding them back, but they're throwing everything they have at us. Delta, this is Beta, Martinez's cheerful voice added. Surface is secure for now, but I'm seeing movement that suggests they're planning something big.
Delta, this is Gamma, Park's calm tones concluded.
Overwatch shows hostile forces converging from all directions. Conservative estimate is 30,000 contacts.
30,000.
The number would have been impossible for most military forces to handle, but the Death's Head Battalion had faced impossible odds before. They were humanity's finest, and they were about to remind the galaxy why their species had never encountered a challenge they couldn't overcome.
Understood, Volkov replied calmly. Delta Squad is initiating final extraction phase.
She turned to the research team, her expression professional despite the overwhelming odds they faced.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going home.
My colleagues are going to provide cover while we reach our extraction vehicle. When I give the signal, you will move quickly and follow my instructions exactly. Dr. Mitchell looked at the Russian sergeant who had carved a path through hell itself to reach them.
Sergeant Volkov, are we really going to make it out of here alive? Volkov's expression became something that might have been a smile. Doctor, you are under the protection of the Death's Head Battalion. We are 96 humans who have never failed a mission and never left anyone behind. She gestured toward the surface, where the sounds of battle were reaching a crescendo. Right now, my colleagues are demonstrating to those creatures why humanity earned its reputation throughout the galaxy. We do not just survive impossible situations. We master them. The final phase of the extraction was about to begin, and, with it, a demonstration of human warfare that would become legend throughout galactic space. The Death's Head Battalion was about to show the galaxy what happened when humanity's monsters went to work. The surface of Kepler 442b had become a battlefield that would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. 30,000 interdimensional predators had converged on the facility's extraction point, creating a massive hostile force that should have been impossible to overcome with any conventional military approach. But the Death's Head Battalion didn't use conventional approaches. Colonel Marcus Kane stood in the command center of the HTCV Mjolnir, watching tactical displays that showed his 96 people facing odds that violated every principle of military science. Any other commander would have called for immediate evacuation, abandoning the mission as impossible. Kane smiled. All teams, this is Kane, he transmitted over the tactical network. Final phase authorization is granted. Show them what human warfare looks like when we stop playing by their rules. The response was immediate and devastating. Major Chen's voice came through first, calm despite the chaos around her. Alpha Squad, weapons free. Maximum aggression protocol authorized. Alpha Squad exploded into motion like a pack of wolves that had been held back by leashes. 12 humans who had spent their entire careers mastering the art of close-quarters combat suddenly had permission to demonstrate why their species had never encountered an enemy they couldn't destroy through superior skill and absolute determination.
The corridor that had been a defensive position became a killing field where humans moved like forces of nature. Chen's modified assault rifle eliminated targets faster than her tactical computer could track, while her squad flowed around obstacles and through enemy formations like deadly smoke.
Hostiles are breaking, Sergeant Rodriguez reported, his medical training allowing him to analyze enemy morale as well as their biochemistry. They're not retreating tactically. They're running in panic. But Alpha Squad wasn't content to simply drive back the hostiles. They pressed their advantage with the relentless efficiency that made human warfare legendary throughout galactic space. Every corridor became a monument to human tactical superiority, every room a demonstration of what happened when humanity's finest decided that something needed to die. For levels above, Beta Squad was providing a masterclass in creative destruction. Captain Martinez had turned the facility's upper levels into an interconnected network of explosive traps, each one triggered by the next in a chain reaction that defied conventional understanding of controlled demolitions. Corporal Juan, Martinez called cheerfully over the sound of sequential explosions, "Initiate the cascade sequence. Let's bring this whole place down in exactly the right pattern." Juan's fingers danced over her detonation controls, triggering charges in a sequence that had been calculated to create maximum destruction while protecting the extraction route below. The result was a demonstration of demolitions artistry that turned warfare into a form of deadly sculpture. Explosions bloomed throughout the facility's upper levels, each one perfectly timed to drive hostile forces into predetermined kill zones while simultaneously weakening structural supports in exactly the right patterns. The entire upper facility began collapsing in a controlled avalanche that eliminated thousands of hostiles while leaving Delta Squad's extraction route completely intact. "Sir," Wong called excitedly, "the cascade is working perfectly. The hostiles can't adapt fast enough to avoid the destruction pattern." Martinez nodded with satisfaction, watching his carefully crafted network of destruction eliminate more hostiles than entire military campaigns typically managed. "Wong, this is what happens when humans decide that something needs to stop existing. We don't just kill it. We erase it from reality." 6 kilometers away, Lieutenant Colonel Park was demonstrating why Gamma Squad was considered the galaxy's finest precision marksman. His enhanced rifle had been firing continuously for over 2 hours, and every shot had been perfect despite atmospheric conditions that would have made accurate shooting impossible for most species. "Sir," called Staff Sergeant Thompson through his spotting scope, "massive formation approaching from the northwest. They're using terrain features for cover." Park's cybernetic enhancements calculated firing solutions that took into account wind patterns, gravity differential, atmospheric density, and the quantum uncertainty principles that governed interdimensional targeting. When he pulled the trigger, his shot passed through 3 different dimensional phases before eliminating a target that shouldn't have been hittable. "Confirmed kill," Thompson reported. "Sir, how is that even possible? That target was partially phased out of our reality." Park was already tracking his next target, his rifle moving with machine-like precision. "Thompson, humans have been hitting impossible targets for thousands of years. We put arrows into moving targets from horseback, we hit aircraft with unguided projectiles, and we've learned to shoot accurately in zero gravity." He pulled the trigger again, eliminating another hostile that had been using interdimensional phasing for protection. Interdimensional targeting is just another technical problem. And humans excel at solving technical problems through superior skill and stubborn determination. Gamma Squad opened fire in perfect synchronization, their enhanced rifles creating a symphony of precision shooting that eliminated hostiles faster than they could advance. Each shot was calculated for maximum tactical impact, targeting creatures that were providing coordination for larger formations. The result was a demonstration of marksmanship that bordered on the supernatural. Humans who had spent decades perfecting their craft showing the galaxy why their species had never encountered a targeting problem they couldn't solve through superior training and absolute dedication to excellence. On the facility's surface, the final extraction was beginning. Master Sergeant Volkov led the research team through the emergency exit her squad had carved through solid rock, emerging into the toxic atmosphere of Kepler 442b's surface. What they saw defied rational description. The landscape had been transformed into something that looked like the aftermath of a war between gods. Crystalline formations that had stood for millions of years had been reshaped into defensive positions. The facility's surface structures had been turned into an interconnected network of fortifications that provided overlapping fields of fire in every direction. And, in the center of it all, the HTCV Mjolnir waited like a predator ready to carry them home. "Move quickly but stay calm,"
Volkov instructed the research team as they crossed the transformed battlefield. My colleagues have secured the extraction route, but we need to reach the ship before hostile reinforcements arrive.
Dr.
Mitchell followed closely behind, still struggling to comprehend what she was witnessing. The Death's Head Battalion hadn't just rescued them, they had turned the entire disaster into a demonstration of human military superiority that would be remembered throughout galactic history.
Sergeant Volkov, she called breathlessly, how many of those creatures have your people eliminated? Volkov's expression didn't change as she guided them toward the waiting ship. Doctor, we do not count casualties during active operations. We count objectives achieved. Our objective was to bring you home alive. Everything else is just details.
Behind them, the facility continued to collapse in the controlled pattern that Captain Martinez had designed. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers, each one eliminating more hostiles while protecting the civilians they had come to save. Above them, Lieutenant Colonel Park's Overwatch position provided continuous covering fire, his rifle speaking in the steady rhythm that had never missed a target. Each shot was perfectly calculated to eliminate threats before they could engage the extraction team. And, throughout the facility's lower levels, Major Chen's Alpha Squad was conducting a fighting withdrawal that looked more like a predatory advance. They moved through hostile forces like sharks through a school of fish, eliminating everything in their path while maintaining perfect formation discipline. All teams, this is Kane, came the colonel's voice over the tactical network.
Research team is approaching extraction vehicle.
Prepare for final disengagement. Alpha Squad ready for disengagement, Chen reported, her voice calm despite having spent hours in continuous combat.
Beta Squad ready, Martinez added cheerfully. Facility destruction sequence is complete. This place won't be a threat to anyone ever again. Gamma Squad ready, Park's calm tones confirmed. Overwatch will maintain coverage until all teams are aboard.
Delta Squad has civilians secure and ready for departure, Volkov concluded as they reached the Mjolnir's loading ramp.
Colonel Kane watched from the ship's bridge as his people executed the kind of tactical withdrawal that military academies would study for generations.
Alpha Squad flowed up through the facility like deadly smoke, eliminating the last pockets of resistance while maintaining perfect unit cohesion. Beta Squad triggered their final demolition sequence, ensuring that nothing remained of the hostile stronghold.
Gamma Squad provided covering fire that eliminated any hostiles attempting to interfere with the extraction. And Delta Squad ensured that all 27 researchers were safely aboard and ready for departure.
All teams aboard, Kane announced as the Mjolnir's engines began their startup sequence.
Mission accomplished.
Dr. Mitchell found herself in the ship's medical bay, being examined by human medics who treated her with the same professional competence they showed in everything else. Around her, the other researchers were receiving similar care, their 3-day nightmare finally over. Doctor, said the medic examining her, a young woman whose uniform bore the insignia of Delta Squad, you've been through a significant ordeal.
How are you feeling?
Grateful, Mitchell replied honestly.
And confused. How did 96 people accomplish what 3 entire military battalions couldn't? The medic's expression became something that might have been a smile. Doctor, those weren't human military units.
They were alien soldiers fighting according to alien tactical doctrines. The Death's Head Battalion fights according to human principles.
What's the difference? Alien military doctrine is based on overwhelming force, superior technology, or numerical advantage. Human military doctrine is based on adaptability, creativity, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat.
She gestured toward the ship's bridge, where Colonel Kane was conducting the post-mission debrief with his team leaders.
Those 96 people didn't just rescue you.
They demonstrated to the galaxy why humanity has never encountered a military challenge we couldn't overcome through superior skill and determination. Mitchell looked out through the medical bay's viewport as Kepler 442b fell away behind them. The planet's surface was still glowing with the fires of Beta Squad's demolition work, a testament to human engineering applied to the complete elimination of a threat.
The hostiles, she asked quietly, what happened to them?
Doctor, the medic replied simply, they encountered the Death's Head Battalion.
That means they no longer exist as a threat to anyone.
In the ship's briefing room, Colonel Kane was conducting the after-action review with his team leaders. Each of them bore the marks of combat, but their expressions showed the satisfaction of professionals who had accomplished their mission with characteristic human efficiency. Final casualty report, Kane requested.
Alpha Squad, 0 casualties, Major Chen reported. All objectives achieved. Beta Squad, 0 casualties, Captain Martinez added. Facility completely destroyed, no possibility of hostile resurgence. Gamma Squad, 0 casualties, Lieutenant Colonel Park confirmed. Overwatch mission completed successfully. Delta Squad, 0 casualties, Master Sergeant Volkov concluded. All civilians extracted safely with complete research data secured. Kane nodded grimly.
Another mission completed, another demonstration that the Death's Head Battalion was humanity's answer to impossible problems. They had faced 30,000 interdimensional predators and eliminated them completely while suffering 0 casualties and accomplishing every mission objective.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kane said quietly, job well done. The galaxy has been reminded once again why they call us when everyone else has failed.
3 days later, Admiral Cathvar of the Galactic Defense Council stood in his office, reading the mission report from the Death's Head Battalion. The document was brief, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. Mission: extract research team from Kepler 442b. Hostile force, estimated 30,000 interdimensional predators. Human force deployed, 96 Death's Head Battalion personnel. Time to mission completion, 18 hours, 23 minutes. Human casualties, 0 civilian casualties, 0 hostile survivors, 0 facility status, completely destroyed, no possibility of resurgence. The report continued with technical details that made Cathvar's scales itch. The humans hadn't just rescued the research team, they had eliminated an entire species of interdimensional predators and destroyed their stronghold so completely that the planet was now considered safe for future research operations. Sir, his aide Lieutenant Commander Yixtal entered the office, were receiving requests from 17 different systems for Death's Head Battalion assistance with various military situations. Cathvar set down the report and looked out at the stars.
Somewhere out there, 96 humans were preparing for their next impossible mission. The galaxy's final answer to questions that shouldn't be asked.
Decline all requests, he said quietly. The Death's Head Battalion isn't something you call for routine problems.
They're what you call when reality itself needs to be reminded that humans don't accept the impossible.
He picked up the report again, reading the final line that would become famous throughout galactic military history: mission accomplished.
All personnel returned safely. Hostile threat eliminated permanently. Death's Head Battalion stands ready for next assignment.
Simple words that carried the weight of absolute certainty. Humanity's monsters had gone to work, and they had reminded the galaxy once again why their species had earned its reputation not through diplomacy or technology, but through an absolute, uncompromising refusal to let their people die alone. The researchers were safe. The hostiles were extinct. And, somewhere in the depths of space, the Death's Head Battalion continued its journey, ready to answer the next call for help from those who had nowhere else to turn. After all, they were humanity's final answer to impossible problems. And they had never failed a mission.